Alrighty, everybody. Welcome to the group chat on the two-way platform. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us. As always, our ethos is peace, love, and understanding, and we encourage you to reflect those values as you participate in our show. And we want you to participate. We want you to raise those hands, and we'll call on you to participate, hear from you, answer your questions, get your feedback on these important issues of the day. Now, you may have noticed that we have an entirely fresh guest panel for the day. I am joined by Chris Hahn of the Aggressive Progressive podcast, Stephen Olikara, who's a former U.S. Senate candidate and a senior fellow for political reform at the Schwarzenegger Institute, and Mary Margaret Olohan of the Daily Wire. This is a fantastic group of people that I'm really excited to talk to today about what else, immigration, which has been the major news story, I think, now for a while. I was thinking that, of course, we'd already addressed the shooting of Alex Pretti on this show, but then I was counting in my head and realizing we only do this on Thursdays, and this came out over the weekend, which I think goes to show like how many lives we live every day of the week in this news cycle in 2026. So actually, we haven't discussed this at all yet. Community members have probably been paying close attention to this story, another death of an American citizen during an altercation with immigration law enforcement in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The video footage of that went viral on social media and has been discussed greatly. The administration swiftly came out and assigned blame to Alex Pretti, the man who was killed by the officers. Others have pushed back and say that that was a wrongful behavior on their part. The most recent news, of course, was the release of an additional video showing an altercation between Alex Pretti and a different group of officers a week before. That came out, I think, last night and has maybe generated some different discussions about how to assign blame and how we should think about this. Let's play that video before we say anything else. Alex Pretti spit at a law enforcement vehicle and then actually kick it, and he kicked out the taillight, which prompted the vehicle to stop. They got out of the car. They did then detain him. Whether that resulted in some kind of charge is unknown or not known to me yet. Now, that was totally separate, of course, from the video we saw where he was killed a week later. So my takeaway would be that it doesn't really affect the justification for the shooting itself. But I was seeing some people on the right saying this should change how he was being perceived by the mainstream media, the kind of canonization he was about to undergo. Stephen, I'll start with you. What was your reaction to that new video, which, it did show him destroying public property? That's a crime. He can't be charged for that. Shouldn't be killed for it, but, maybe changing some minds.
Yeah, I think it doesn't change our thinking on the ultimate result here, which is he didn't deserve to die, and that represented a misuse of power by the authorities there. But it does perhaps add some additional color into his motivations, his intentions, his attitude as he approached these protests. And I think that in itself could potentially sway some public sentiment here. I think it potentially reinforces my general position on this, which is, Alex is not blameless here, but at the same time, he did not deserve to die.
Mary Margaret, I saw, welcome to the show. Great to have you with us. I did see, there is still some debate. There's been criticism, obviously, of the administration, even by some people on the right, for how they've handled this. But others, I've seen other conservatives saying, well, I mean, look, this speaks to our point that he was looking for confrontations with law enforcement.
Exactly. I mean, look, we've been told right away, right from the get-go by the left, by many in the legacy media that, this guy was just a loving ICU nurse, that he did nothing wrong, that he was brutally murdered. But this video, and actually another one that we saw yesterday as well, indicates that no, this guy was aggressively harassing ICE and law enforcement, actually begging them to attack him. And that does not warrant the death that he ultimately faced. And that is incredibly tragic that he lost his life. and I know many others would like to see the result of this investigation into his death and to learn more about the circumstances there. Because as we can see in this video, it indicates that we didn't know the full picture of what this guy was doing. We didn't have the full understanding of what he had been up to before this attack. And we had heard that he was previously known to ICE. So this is a good example of how he had been antagonizing and harassing. And now this legacy media narrative that this was just a very, holy ICU nurse that was the next victim of ICE has really fallen apart.
Chris, weigh in. Is this going to change how Democrats are talking about this story?
I don't think it's going to change how anybody's talking about the story. I think the horse has left the barn, right? This video is from a week earlier. It came out a couple of days after people have already formed opinions on things. And one thing I've learned over the last, 10 years in politics is people don't really change their mind a whole lot in America anymore. So there's been a narrative that has been established about what happened that day, and it's probably not going to change. Did I think he was blameless that day? No. But I do think that the officers in question here were overly aggressive. They did not have to kill him. And I think that it's a sick, when you take that with the Renee Good killing the week prior, what you have is chaos. And the American people don't like chaos. They don't like untrained officers in the streets using deadly force. And that goes to the entire narrative of what's been going on with ICE. They've been in such a rush to get all this, to complete their mission and to meet their numbers that they haven't really trained the people who are now interacting with the public on a regular basis. And as a result, there's been some bad things happening.
Mary Margaret, can you speak to Tom Homan being brought in? I think that's being received by a lot of people as a relief that he's such a professional law enforcement person with some degree of respect on both sides. Little bit of a differences in tactics with perhaps Kristi Noem and some others. And is this well? I guess is that saying she's in any trouble? How is this being received by the right?
Well, look, Kristi Noem was at Trump's cabinet meeting today, and not only did she not speak, but he didn't call on her. And he did say in the cabinet meeting that he wasn't going to call on everyone because it was so boring, which has, been a funny little joke among everyone,
Did he say
especially
he's been
the
falling
media.
asleep in these meetings because they're boring?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I don't want to pay attention to this.
He gets
said
bored
they're
when
too
people
long.
are just fluffing him up like that. They got to do better at it.
I think he gets
Maybe
bored
bring
of
him
the
golden.
Well, I think he
or
gets
something.
bored of the easy praise from people who just have to praise him.
Right.
And he wants praise from that's why he got along so well with Zoran Mamdani, because it's nice when people are nice to him that are not absolutely required to be. But
he likes a stimulating conversation, but she didn't speak. She didn't speak in that cabinet meeting. A lot of people, especially White House reporters like myself, are very curious how she would respond in that cabinet meeting. It was the first time we had seen her publicly since everything that's been going on. We know that she met privately with Trump for several hours a couple days ago, I believe with Corey Lewandowski as well. So her fate is kind of up in the air. Tom Homan, on the other hand, this morning at 8 a.m. ET, 7 a.m. CT in Minneapolis, gave a presser spoke to media for a while, delivered remarks, and his demeanor was very much, we have this, I'm here, we're going to clean this up, we got this, we're working with state and local officials, and everyone needs to comply or else. And that's really kind of the magic of Tom Homan. Whether or not you like him, he means what he says. So I think we're going to see results from him there. He's already saying that they're having successes. He says they're working with local officials and that they've agreed to come in and help ICE, not with rounding up illegal criminals or people they're trying to deport, but merely if things get out of hand, if things get hostile, which I think is already a win for Tom Homan, and I'm sure we're going to see more.
Here's how bad the other guy was. Democrats are saying, oh, thank God, Tom Holman's here now.
Yeah.
I mean,
but
to show you.
I think that speaks to what you were raising earlier, Robbie, just the multiple lives of the story like this. So this story, in my case, was hitting while my nonprofit was hosting events at the Sundance Film Festival. So we were not necessarily paying attention to the minute by minute of a story like this. And then every single day, there's something that sort of changes the narrative. And now you have Tom Homan, who's approaching this with a very different tone than Kristi Noem did 4 days ago. And I think for audiences who are tuning in, they're just wondering, how to navigate this and who to be listening to, because the initial sort of outrage on both sides for different reasons is now evolving to a more nuanced position from Tom Homan and from different people in the administration.
I mean, is that going to be received by Jacob Fry and Tim Walz with anything short of defiance? Because Trump said he had a good call. I think he had a good call with both of them. He had a call with Walz, and then he said he'd had a good call with Jacob Fry, but then didn't understand why he was saying the things he was saying after that. That there was going to be some compromise in terms of, well, you know, are you holding, if you're holding people, if you're holding illegal immigrants and they have some outstanding other criminal issue, could you cooperate with us? And that there would be some middle ground. And I can't tell. It seems like Fry is not willing to concede that, but maybe Walz is. So is there going to be any working together?
But Fry doesn't actually have a prison or a jail. Those are county jails and county prisons.
We're all in the prison of our own mind.
Yeah, I think that I think we're all
very deep.
I think the next 3.5 years, 3 years are going to be a prison of our own mind for a lot of us. But so it's like there's a lot of rhetoric there. But I heard Tom Homan say, yeah, we've been cooperating with the prisons, and most people don't know the difference between a prison and a jail, right? A jail is where you go where you're awaiting trial, where you have not been convicted. A prison is where you go after you're convicted. And I've always argued that, I think that it's a little misleading to say that they won't work with you with convicted felons, right? It's when they will work with you in these sanctuary jurisdictions. Mondami laid it out perfectly when he was in the White House. He said there are 140 crimes that if you commit in the city of New York, we will turn you over to ICE for if you're convicted. It's the when, it's the process. It's when do we want this to happen?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, at the same time, Mamdani and Fry and Walz, none of them agree that these illegals should be deported in the first place. And if these are illegal criminals, they're not being very supportive of ICE rounding them up at the very beginning of this. So I don't know that they're going to be assisting in any way unless they're put in a very hard place. And Jacob Fry was in DC today. Actually, I believe he's still here to try and lobby to get ICE out of Minneapolis. And he spent all day on Capitol Hill, I believe, in meeting with federal officials to try and get to that point. So
look,
ICE is going to continue pushing this point.
ICE is going to leave Minneapolis. It's only a question of when and how, and they are going to tone down their operations. This has been a loser for the president. He is not dumb. He could read a poll. He knows what's going on here. He knows there has to be a change. He's got to try to figure out what the win is. I saw Tom Homan this morning trying to suggest there was a win. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good step. But I think within the next 3 weeks, this is over there.
I don't know about that because this is, I mean, really quickly, sorry, Stephen, this is an issue that the president campaigned on. This is an issue that most Americans voted for. Well, I mean, this is a big part of it. The media has represented things in a very specific way, but most Americans did vote to get these illegals out of the country. And
yes,
so that is part of the president's agenda.
But they are now very uncomfortable with the tactics that have been employed. So I would think that he's got to throw somebody under the bus. It's probably going to be Kristi Noem. He already fired, I can't remember the guy's name. I keep calling him Colonel Lockjaw from that movie, One Battle After Another, because I think I'm the only one who saw it, though, so it's not making out.
You mean Bovino.
So, he's going to have to throw somebody under the bus. He's going to have to make a change.
I mean, he doesn't like to, it's his personnel. I don't think he's going to concede necessarily that, the liberal media is really mad about this, so I have to fire someone.
No, he'll make her ambassador to Estonia or something, but she's not long for the cabinet.
Yeah,
I think the over under is 4 weeks for her right now, and I'm taking the under.
I don't know about that.
I think,
go ahead, Stephen.
What do you got? What do you got as the over under for her? You think she lasts more than a couple of months?
I don't think she's going. I think she's not going to have. I don't think she's going to be forced from her role. I think Tom Homan is going to take over this aspect of the role, which he was kind of intended to have in the first place. And but I don't think she's going to technically be ousted. But
I think You're right, Chris, that the political terrain is shifting under Trump's feet. Approval for ICE, approval for immigration is dropping precipitously for him. At the same time, Trump is just not known to accept the L on a particular issue.
Right.
I think he digs deeper and deeper and deeper until he moves people, at least his own base, in his direction. So Chrissy Noem's approval rating is probably in the tank right now too. I don't see him moving her. By the way, as we talk about this strategically, it's just so hard because this is a very human issue that's happening right now. Just to further underscore it, it's such a tragedy. Not only the lives that have been lost and the violence that's happened, but the way that these moments have impacted the sort of human psyche and the type of politics that we have in our country, the scenes that really mimic Civil War like scenes, referring to the Civil War film that came out in 2024 that imagines a second American Civil War. You have sort of masked people on the streets. And I appreciate the libertarian voices like Rand Paul, who I've been seeing really raising some of the civil liberties concerns here. And I know we'll talk more about reforms later in this conversation, but the need for judicial warrants, I think, is a really important conversation here, having accountable law enforcement. And I think those are issues that actually we can get a consensus, sort of a 60 to 70% consensus.
How about a Congress that actually executes its role under the Constitution and provides real oversight to what is clearly an overreach of political power by an administration that doesn't believe in the first, in Article 1 of the Constitution?
Well, I mean, we're talking about Minneapolis here. This is one of the only cities in the country that has seen this kind of chaos, and these deportations have been happening all over the country. So I think before we start getting into all of the things that you all just mentioned, we might as well look at what's going on the ground there, because the reason that Alex Pretti died is because he went up to federal law enforcement with a gun and got involved in a deportation situation. He should not have died, but that is why he died. The reason that he was in that first altercation is because he was kicking the taillights out of ICE officers' cars, not for another reason. So the people who are involving themselves in these horrific situations are putting themselves in danger. They're approaching law enforcement and being violent and aggressive, and that is why we are seeing danger and unrest in places like Minneapolis.
The law enforcement, the ICE agents and Border Patrol officers are not behaving like regular law enforcement.
You saw that video
like
yesterday.
There are people who kick out your taillight behaving like a normal protester, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, look at the video we saw from yesterday. By the way, that was from 2 weeks ago. That was from the BBC, a BBC affiliated journalist who caught that footage accidentally. How many other incidents like that do you think we haven't seen or have been captured as accidentally or will come to light in future days?
Here's the thing, though.
It's not unusual for these
what
attacks
he did
to
in that incident
has
nothing to do with why he was killed and the incident that happened that day. Has nothing to do with it.
There has been a 4,000% increase in attacks on ICE officers in these recent weeks, partially due to the fact that the media is kind of glorifying people like Renee Good, who are ramming ICE officers.
There's been no attacks on ICE officers until Trump decided to use them like this, put them in masks, make them look menacing. I mean, I don't understand the mask.
They're carrying out the deportation of illegal immigrants that people voted for when they made Trump the president. You can protest that. You should record it. I'm all for civil libertarian things. You can't, and I worry that the idea is being normalized among the protesting class, maybe institutionally by groups, maybe just informally. I don't know how formal this kind of activist education is at this point, but the idea that if you think it's illegitimate, use your car to block the way. Push officers out of the way, get in their way. And that is all bad advice that has already gotten people killed and will continue to do so.
Well, this is what happens when they don't cooperate, when they don't make a deal with the local authorities before they come into the jurisdiction, right?
Or it's just what happens when local authorities won't back federal
You got
officials.
look.
I mean,
but Mary, you've got to
names.
actually, before you send 3,000, masked agents into a region, you need to have cooperation of local law enforcement for the protesters. In New York, this would never happen in New York, right? Even if they didn't have a deal with New York would make sure that the protesters stayed away from, because we have a system here to do that. When you have a jurisdiction like Minneapolis that is not accustomed to these kinds of activities, although they should be over the last couple of years to an extent. But they have a much smaller force. It's very difficult, and there should have been coordination between the federal government before they went in. I don't understand what the rush is, right? And if they thought that they were being, not cooperative, there are political means to get them to cooperate. You don't just throw the army in there and say you're going to do what we want. We have dual sovereigns in America. We have federalism. We have the 10th Amendment, and it needs to be respected.
Absolutely agree with you. It just, I mean, I would like more information, but it seems like there was not a desire for cooperation.
But that doesn't mean you just
part.
do it. You got to
either side.
Donald Trump's supposed to be the deal maker. Make a deal. Go make a deal. Or put political pressure on them to make them come to the table. He didn't do that. That's what normal presidents would do when they want to get something done.
The political pressure was, okay, if you're not going to deal with us, then we're sending in national law enforcement to do whatever we want. And then you can come to the table and say, well, we'll assist you in this. And then it won't look like a civil war, to Stephen's point. It'll look like,
well, either way, politically, this has destroyed Republicans. The voters are going to take it out on them. Done.
I don't know about that.
I mean, I think
this is going to be.
I spent all my time.
A bloodbath for congressional Republicans.
I spent all my time with legacy reporters, and there's nothing they love to do more than say, this is the thing that's tanking Republicans. Yeah, this is the thing that's
this and everything else.
And look, I'm sorry, I've heard it too many times. This specific incident, Alex Pretti, Renee Good, they didn't portray, they're not shining a good light on this ICE mission. They're not shining a good light on President Trump's deportation efforts. But how many times has Trump taken an issue like this and turned it around and been completely fine? So many times. So
can I tell you what it is, Mary?
It's a little too joyous of people to jump on it and say,
it's the accumulation of chaos. Everything that this administration has done has appeared chaotic. His policy towards Greenland was chaotic. His response to the Epstein files, chaotic.
I think here,
Chicago was chaotic. Los Angeles was chaotic. Minneapolis is chaotic.
I mean, he's got to do what, right? He's got to do what.
Chaos.
Okay, but the conservatives want a lot of those things, and they want the deportation. I think where they might have hurt themselves here more than they needed to is that the statements from the not actually even from Trump himself, but from Noam and others were, and maybe it's just my view, and maybe no voters would actually feel like this, but just got way over their skis they could just say, I don't know why they couldn't just say, it's sad somebody got killed. We'll do an investigation. We don't like this. It's absolutely Democrats' fault for not cooperating with us, but we're going to look into it, and we don't want this to be the outcome. Rather than, well, he was a domestic terrorist who came at us with a gun, which was instantly disproven.
Ridiculous.
So that's where it gets them into trouble, I think.
They are asking us to believe things that are opposite from what we are seeing. And America's seen enough. They've seen enough. I'm telling you.
Chris, maybe you've seen enough. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, actually, my point is along those lines.
Okay, Stephen, go ahead. Stephen, go ahead.
Well, my point is along those lines. I think it depends which voters, which audiences you're talking about. I think MAGA voters are going to continue to trust the president, and obviously most Democratic voters are going to oppose him. But for swing voters and independent voters who are more questioning of authority and don't take everything they hear as sacred, they are going to lose their trust a bit in this administration because of how the narrative has not lined up with the video. That has some consequences, but Chris, I don't think this is going to be the issue that causes the 26 midterms to swing one way or another. I think
it's a cumulative effect.
Yeah, I think there are larger forces at play, including the fact that the parties have reinvented themselves over the last 10 years, and actually Democrats are now the high propensity voters and Republicans aren't. It used to be flipped. And so in a midterm election, that just gives Democrats a bit more of a built-in advantage. I do think this trust issue will impact independent voters, and that will be a factor going forward.
We've got
if you keep making sense like that, I'm going to have to keep on. I'm going to have to break out my Arnold Schwarzenegger impersonation to throw you off your game a little bit.
I welcome
not
that.
great.
We were doing a lot of we did all our impressions last time. It was a lot of fun. Okay, but we got to get to some community member participation. We've got some hands up. Let's bring somebody on down. I think we've got Anthony. Is that Anthony? I believe it is.
Hi, guys.
Nice to have you with us. How you doing?
Make yourself comfortable, Anthony.
Good, thanks. So, I'm an independent myself, so I think I have a very nuanced take on it. I don't like what happened to Alex Peretti. Regardless of what happened beforehand, he didn't deserve to die. Um, on the other hand, and I'm glad that, even though I'm not a fan of him completely, I'm glad that Tom Homan came in and was able. I liked the press conference. I watched it. Um, so I'm going to criticize both the right and the left here. I think the right needs to understand that they can't just go all guns blazing, not abiding by court orders when they don't like them, and say, "Oh, well, because this person, even though they've been in the country for 40 years, they contribute to society, they need to go." On the other hand, on the left, I'm not a big fan of the abolish ICE stuff. I myself am the son of a former law enforcement officer who served in the force for 15 years. I have been very disillusioned by the Democrats' attitude towards law enforcement officers for the past 5 years. And my dad was a Clinton Democrat, very supportive of President Clinton, because they treat all law enforcement officers as bad or and stuff like that and call them horrible stuff. Now, obviously, it's not towards law enforcement officers in this case, it's towards ICE. But I think, yeah, obviously those dudes who well, that wasn't ICE, that was Border Patrol who killed Alex Purdy were terrible. But I think to blame all those guys for that, because I agree with Tom Homan that says these guys have families too. I don't think that these guys are horrible monsters and stuff. And like he said, like as Tom Homan said, if they have seen the fraction of stuff I have seen, these guys are probably jaded. I know that personally. My dad had very bad PTSD toward all the way to the end of his life. And he had to deal with
Sorry to hear that.
kids that had their brains blown out from in gang violence. So it's very frustrating when I hear people on the left say, "Oh, police officers are bad," when they don't understand the amount of stuff that they have to do. I know this is not police officers, but it's
Yeah.
ICE, and
It's law,
ICE
it's
is
law
a form of
enforcement.
law.
Well, what I didn't, again, didn't appreciate was, okay, we're watching video on social media of something that happened that was bad. Somebody got killed, and we don't the whether it was justifiable to use lethal force. It's same thing with the Renee Good situation, cannot be determined by any of us from watching a quick social media clip. It will be determined by people who it should be investigated. It has to be investigated. The local police in a case, Rand Paul made this point the other day, in a case where it's unambiguous that a shooting was justified, they would still investigate it.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
You call for
That's
calm,
right.
you announce an
Exactly. There's a
investigation.
determination for whether did the officer reasonably fear for their life. That's the threshold. And oftentimes that threshold is met. And I think in the Renee Good case, it might very well be met. Maybe even in this case, it will be met. I don't know. We'd have to hear and find out what they were thinking. And that was it an accident? Did they think he had the gun? Was it wrongful?
The
But it's
problem
not,
is,
we don't
Robbie,
know. That's
is
what we
that
got to do.
the problem is that by coming and rushing to judgment with Renee Good
Yeah.
and with Pretti, nobody's going to believe any investigation
Well,
that comes out of the DHS
yeah,
or
I
the
agree.
FBI. It's they've ruined their
The rush to
credibility
judgment
on
was
this.
bad. I agree.
But
with you.
I do agree with the viewer. Democrats need to make it clear that they do support law enforcement. I mean, I was the chief deputy county executive of Nassau County, where you just were, Mary. And I had a very professional police force that I believed in and that I worked very closely with. And I am still a big supporter of law enforcement. And I think that the defund police movement was the dumbest political movement in the history of political movements, frankly. Right? It actually set back the reforms that they were actually trying to get through. If it would have been reform the police, everybody would have been on board with that, right? But that was not what they did. So, I think Democrats do need to make it clear that they support law enforcement, that they support our men and women in uniform, that they support Border Patrol, that they support ICE, but not the tactics that are being employed right now. I think this mask thing, this making them look like thugs thing, is hurting them. It's hurting the effort. It's making it something like you pointed out, it looks like something out of a movie, and intentionally.
It might look like something out of a movie, but let's not forget what's going on the ground here. Because I know reporters, I have a colleague, Jenny, who was riding around with ICE, I believe a week or two ago. She said they were tailed the entire day. They were harassed the entire day. Whenever they got out of the car, it was uncomfortable because people were following and tailing them. Not only are these activists, and I feel like activists is the wrong way to describe them because these are people with sometimes violent intentions towards ICE. So they're dangerous people. They are keeping track of their faces. They're taking photos. They're taking videos. They're tracking license plates. They're tracking hotels. They are putting these ICE officers in dangerous situations. And let's keep in mind, these are not just like robots or what are those things called in Star Wars? Stormtroopers. These are real people. These are young men and women,
Well,
mothers, fathers, brothers,
they
sisters.
should make
And keep in
themselves out
mind,
to be real
keep in
people
mind,
then and take the
keep in
masks
mind,
off.
they are real people who have to shield their identities.
No, they don't.
Or yes, they do,
No.
because if they don't, they'll have pictures taken of them.
I'm sorry.
They'll have
I'm
their
sorry.
identity tracked.
This is such a bogus.
I mean,
Look,
I
I've
don't know.
been
Is
a
that totally
liberal in
bogus that
conservative
people will
media.
It's
show up to
I have been
their
a liberal in
Okay, so you
conservative
go out
media
there.
for almost 20 years. Okay? People know my face. They know my name. They can find me.
That's absurd.
I was in
we
public
and
service.
we the
People
take
knew who I
havers
was.
are
This is-
safe.
This is BS.
No.
And
Chris,
I'm
people-
sorry. These
everyone
masks
in here
gotta come
has-
down. Look, the masks have got to
Well,
come down.
Faith,
If you want
okay.
them to
Well-
be treated like people, they got to look like people.
While we're saying the mask should come down, I just like to mention I spent all day yesterday writing a story about the rhetoric that Democrats are using to describe ICE agents. They're using all kinds of Gestapo and Nazi imagery to describe these ICE agents. Why? Because they want to paint them as akin to Hitler. They want to paint them as akin to the SS. Tim Walz, Jacob Frey, Gavin Newsom, I reached out to Gavin Newsom and said, do you regret painting these ICE agents as Nazis in light of the violence they're facing? And you know what his spokesman told me? He laughed and said that what else do you call people who go around murdering people in cold blood? So not only are they standing by this rhetoric, but they think it's funny and amusing, and they're enjoying spinning up Gavin Newsom's 2028 presidential campaign while they're putting people in danger. So there is no interest in backing law enforcement. This is a political game. This is a political ploy.
You should have a badge and your name and your face exposed. If you want to be if you want to be referred to in negative ways, do what you keep doing what you're doing. Arresting people, taking Americans out of their home in their underwear. Right? Because you don't like the way they speak.
What?
threats.
What? Are you kidding me? That's not why this is happening.
Oh,
Are you serious? Because you don't like the way they speak?
Was dragged out of his house in his underwear. American citizen.
I'm sorry, wait. We gotta go back to that. You just said people are being dragged out of their homes in their underwear because of the way they speak. That's the stupidest thing I ever heard.
Proper English, according to their report.
No.
So
this was the guy. I don't remember the exact circumstances. The position of law enforcement was that they were executing an investigation on an illegal criminal immigrant with a child sex abuse or something of that nature.
It wasn't this guy.
They had it was the wrong guy. Yeah.
I think
they were not arresting him for how he spoke. They were looking for an illegal criminal
spoke with
pedophile.
broken English, and they arrested him.
No, they were looking for.
We got to get to another.
Quickly,
Go ahead, Stephen.
Very quickly, there needs to be some way for law enforcement to be a little bit more accountable. I think they obviously face real threats to your point, Mary. And I think one thing we're sorely in need of in our politics is just humanizing people across our differences. And I would highlight what Anthony was saying, which is I don't think we really have done a good job of storytelling about the ICE and CBP agents. What's their story? Because a lot of the folks I've run into, they're like fresh out of college. They look like they're 23, 25 years old. And what were the circumstances that led them to take that job? And what's the real process before you're put into the field of fire, like in Minneapolis? And so there needs to be a better storytelling, and I think more humanizing across the board to try and mitigate some of the fear that's out there.
All right, let's get a comment from Tom. Tom is up next. And I agree with you. I don't think anyone on the right or any side should be saying no to more training for law enforcement. Who's against more training? That would be great.
Yeah.
Training's always better.
47 days, not enough.
Tom.
Yeah, I think that, first of all, in the case of the tragic incident, the videos, we have to stop trying things by video. We have to let the investigations go through, whether it be the poor man that got killed, why that happened, what happened with the incident with the gentleman in the underwear. I've heard different stories. He took a swing at an officer, why he was being arrested mistakenly. I think that we need to settle down. We can't start, trying everything by a video. Let's get the facts. Let's take down the talk. Let's try to get cooperation with everyone. And by the way, Chris, there was a discussion before they sent all ICE agents into it to try to work with a local. That has always been the case, as you know from New York, as you know from New Jersey, as you know from, in fact, Chicago. The other night, there was an example where they had a problem in Chicago. Then they discussed with the local people. The local people got involved, and the local cops know their communities.
Yeah,
They
I
do the
agree.
work. They work with the people. That should always be the first case. But what happens when you get to the point where people push back and they say, hey, look, we're not going to follow the federal law. This is blah, 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 blah. People get their backs up, and it
You
shouldn't
know
be
what,
that
though?
way.
It's a big country, Tom, and there are other places to send them while you're working out that deal. You have limited resources in ICE, even with the big, beautiful bill and all the money they gave it. They've got limited resources. There are communities that might have welcomed them in and
You know what
worked
the
closer with
percentage
them.
of immigrants that were arrested in the United States? You know where most of them come from and get
Texas.
arrested from? Exactly.
Yeah,
23%.
because that's where they're coming in.
Okay, how much was in Minnesota? What, 2% maybe? 3%, if that's the case?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Well,
don't
that's
have
because
any
there's
other
only
cities throughout the United States?
120,000
How many other states
undocumented
have
immigrants in Minnesota. There are 2.4 million in Texas.
Right.
So I
Now,
don't know, like, what's
how
his name
many
said, why do I
others?
rob banks? Because that's where the money is. Go to Texas because that's where the undocumented immigrants are. Work with them. They want to work with you. You
Well,
can
I
make your
think we
quota.
have
Let's let
problems
Tom
in
finish his
every
point. And
city. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
yeah.
We have challenges in every city, and we only have this type of case in one or two cities. Why is that? I think we should work on the issues and try to resolve that rather than build up the rhetoric. That's all I'm saying.
I
That's my
agree.
comment.
No rhetoric.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's go to Andrej next. I believe is up next. Hello, sir. Thank you for being with us. What's on your mind?
Just, constant disbelief. This is like the third two-way show that has shown that Pretti video about smashing the backlight. And I'm just constantly flummoxed. I was under the impression that the most frightening words are, I'm from the federal government and I'm here to help. And there has been a surge of 3,000 people into a municipality that has only 600 police. A police department that I don't believe had a major shooting in all of 2025. And now we have ICE personnel killing people, two within a span of a week. And yet we're still debating whether this guy was a good guy or not. I agree with the people who said that, the video is irrelevant. The last act this person did was personally put his body to block women who had been shoved to the ground. That's probably the only thing that people need to know about. So my question is about libertarianism. And where is it nowadays? Because it seems to be, let's send in the government as much as possible. And if somebody could point out the defund the police narrative, which administration has eliminated more than 10% of the DOJ and now leaves us without any kind of social media monitoring. So people are saying that Alex Peretti's image is being beefed up for MSNBC. Fake news. People are sharing.
No, it's not.
Oh, yeah? Where was it verified?
You
My
can look at the
understanding is
images. It's very obvious.
Where was it verified?
Altered.
They gave him a glam up. They
What news show shared it?
You can see
MSNBC.
it all.
What?
Yeah,
That's not a news show.
MSNBC did.
What show shared it?
Oh, I didn't see it on the show, but
Surprising.
no, I mean, look, it's all over online.
It wasn't shown on television. It's a meme that went online that this guy was beefed up, just like the pictures of Renee Good's so-called car digitally manipulated, so people thought that her door was open or there was gunshots from the other side.
I don't know. We're agreeing that it was manipulated, though, are we not?
Yeah,
I'm bringing up the
everyone
fact
knows that
it
was manipulated.
I'm bringing up the fact that we have defunded the law enforcement that's supposed to go online, like the Global Engagement Center, the people who are monitoring what disinformation is coming online. And that's part of this whole defund police thing. So my thing is, where are the libertarians here?
Well, let me tackle that. I mean, the
police.
The Libertarian Party Twitter account has been posting nonstop about this being bad. Rand Paul, the most libertarian-leaning member of the only libertarian-leaning member of the Senate, has said things that probably you would mostly agree with, that I mostly agree with, that we need an investigation. So I don't know that, you know, the libertarians are necessarily letting any. I mean, I count myself in that group, and I'm opposed to you know, much of what I'm seeing, but in a non-sensationalist way. So I mean, I have to grapple with the fact that my ideal immigration views are different from much of the rest of the country, certainly different from what people, you know, voted for Trump over. But I absolutely think we should emphasize the importance of civil liberties and importance of warrants and importance of cooperation with you know, local authorities. And that's what I'm seeing, that in stronger commentary really from everybody I know is libertarian, but I don't know how many people that even is. But we've also got Chris next, I believe. Or Chris with us still? There we go. Welcome, sir. What's on your mind?
Oh, so many things.
So many things.
First of all, one of my problems recently, and frankly with a lot of these shows, is, and Chris, I love you. Chris Hahn, you're my favorite new guy.
Thanks, man.
When
I love you too.
When we allow unfounded comments to be floated as fact. So here's one I heard several times today. The American people do not, as a majority, support deporting all illegal entrants. That is not a fact. Go look at the Pew Research polls. What they support is deporting the bad criminals. So Mary Margaret, stop saying that the American people voted to get rid of all these people.
I didn't actually say that. I actually said what you said.
No, you didn't.
Well, I did actually. I mean, you can argue with it, but.
And secondly, since we might agree then that the real focus should be on the illegals, can you tell me what percentage of the illegal entrants are actually violent criminals?
Can I tell you what percentage of them are?
Yeah, you
I know.
Tell me.
You mean violent criminals when they enter, or
who
commit?
Who either have a provable record of prior violent criminal activity or since they got here. Sum the two and tell me the percentage of all the illegal entrants that those two groups comprise.
Well, I mean, low.
You don't
it's a smaller percentage
it's lower
than native-born Americans.
Native-born
we all know that. Right?
I mean,
that is a debated.
It's been proven millions of times.
Yeah.
Also, I think, I mean, I'm a little annoyed by the framing of your question because, look, I'm not DHS. I'm not the authorities. I'm not saying I know everything about what's going on in these situations.
No, what you are.
But I know I'm not. But respectfully, what I am saying
let's let Mary Margaret finish her point, and then you can respond, sir.
Fine.
Respectfully, what I am saying is there are things we know to be true, that the American people voted for Donald Trump. He won the election. He is president of the United States. The American people voted for him because they support his agenda, and that's why he's president. And so I think that's a very good faith thing to say. I also think, you know, the last gentleman that was speaking, he presented he posed a question that I found a little disturbing, in that he seemed to be suggesting that Two-Way and other shows shouldn't be showing the footage of Alex Pretti or talking about it. And look, that's why we have shows like this, is to talk about the information available to us and to discuss what's going on in the world. So there's nothing wrong with saying that, you know, the American people support President Trump's agenda. You just might not like that.
Well, first of all, he won by a hair. So let's not, these generalities, the American people, if 2% of the people in 3 states had flipped over, and if they weren't racist and misogynist, they would have, he wouldn't be president. So stop trying to act like just this overwhelming love the majority of people. He barely got in there against one of the weakest candidates that the dumb Dems could have put up. Now that's my comment
But
about.
he did. So
Yeah,
And
did.
I also
immigration is
but they
his.
voted for a
need to-
variety of reasons, mostly because they
was
thought
that-
prices were too high,
right.
and he hasn't done enough to get
But
them down.
immigration is one of his highest polling issues consistently. I think it would
Not
be
anymore.
look, and again, I don't personally agree with the administration on everything they're doing, but I think it would be
Neither
naive
do I.
to
Yeah.
say that there isn't a maybe not to do it to this extent, but I think it would be naive to say there isn't a mandate to do a significant amount of increased law enforcement on illegal immigration. Then there's
That's a nice vague statement, Robbie.
well, I don't know how vague
But it does
is,
not support this lie that people try to perpetrate, that somehow the majority of the people are okay with what they're doing. The majority of the people were okay with deporting the violent ones. And the reason I asked you guys the question at the outset, do you know what percentage of the really violent ones? Because what keeps happening is Republicans, Stephen Miller, that little Nazi, because that's what he is, they want to go after all of them, but they keep talking about the violent ones to an extent that is not supported by the percentage of the illegals that are in fact violent. I hope everybody could follow.
I actually agree with you more than you might think, because I would put it differently. What I would say is that I think there are members of the administration, including Stephen Miller, that buy the economic arguments against immigration and want to prevent competition for wages with American-born workers, but lean into the getting rid of violent criminals argument when you're right. I mean, that makes it sound like the entire violent crime problem in our country is illegal immigration, which is not true. There's many native-born citizens committing violent crime.
Many more native-born citizens.
Yeah, but look, when we've seen illegal criminals killing beautiful young girls like Laken Riley, Jocelyn Nungray. I'm sorry, I don't really care about this conversation. When you see, I imagine if my younger sister was brutally murdered by one of these illegal criminals,
it's horrible, but it's anecdotal.
There would be nothing that I would want more than to get these illegal criminals out of our country. And the cases that the Trump administration has highlighted when it comes to these beautiful young women and young men and parents who've been killed in car crashes by these illegal criminals, those are just a drop in the bucket of the crimes against Americans that we've seen. So I think when we focus on
everyone with a broad brush,
when we're talking about illegal criminals, pedophiles, rapists, I have seen many men, looked very closely at many of these situations. Pedophiles, rapists, murderers, thieves. These are not people who should be in our country. And I think everyone should be able to agree with that.
I agree. Pedophiles, rapists, murderers should go.
And,
but the guy who's making the bagels down the street or working on a roof, ICE rolled up on a woman who was getting her roof done and arrested everybody working on her roof who had no criminal backgrounds. Give me a break. Look, everybody in this country ran from something. My family ran from the Nazis and from Mussolini, and they got here and there was a process. We need a better process. That Biden almost had a deal with the Republicans for a better process, but Trump didn't want it. He wanted this issue. And he
None
wanted
of
this
these people
moment.
who are illegally in our country used that process. They are all here illegally because they didn't use that process.
Again, there is a broken process that is not keeping up with supply and demand for the labor market here in this country.
Involve cartels
which we have always
and riding on top of
benefited as
trains
Americans
and
by
jungles.
new generations coming in here willing to work hard and innovate. And I think that when we cut that off, which we've done right now, I think that's bad for the future of our country.
Well, I think part of the broken promise that doesn't get talked about enough are the employers of illegal immigrants. Just an honest question to our panel here. Why doesn't DHS go after the employers of illegal immigrants more?
They're Trump's buddies. They've told them they don't want them going to the hotel industry, or they don't want them going on farms.
Because we do need to get at the root issues here. There are a number of root issues that we could point to, but this is one of them. It's one of the incentives for illegal immigration in America. I remember Mitt Romney, when he was running for president, he talked about the E-Verify system that would help to address this issue, but I'm not hearing it much in the discourse right now. I mean, those employers are breaking the law, and shouldn't there be some accountability on them as well?
Well, that'd be very interesting, I think, for Democrats to champion that more. That would tap into some of that left populism. I mean, it gets at a little bit of what Chris and I were talking about, where I agree that different arguments are being marshaled against illegal immigration, the crime aspect, the economic arguments, the wage competition you just mentioned, then also kind of a, a cultural, if we take too many, we could have some cultural impact on the country. And sometimes these are used interchangeably, because I think the crime one is the, to what Mary Margaret was saying, that is very viscerally appealing, that like, obviously not, we should not have illegal immigrants in this country who are murderers and rapists.
Of course.
But also a large number of the illegal immigrants, the frustration is actually that the competition for wages or something else, which Trump goes back and forth on whether he is interested in that. I mean, I watched him. Right. Sometimes he is, and sometimes he goes.
Unemployment in this country, so there is really no competition, and we have 5 million open jobs. We don't have enough workers. The Somalis went to Minnesota because they wanted them there because they needed the workforce in their factories.
MAGA would say we don't have enough. It's because they're undercutting you would have people filling those jobs if they had to be paid. I mean, MAGA and the left would say that
4% unemployment, 5% unemployment is considered full employment, right? Yeah. Because you assume that the 5% with the openings and jobs, if people wanted to work, they would go get those jobs.
Well,
so
look really quickly.
We're competing with ourselves. It is a nonsense economic argument. Because supply and demand are drawing people here. There are jobs for them here. That's why they come here.
Well, yes,
the right wants to paint them as welfare, queens, which they're not. Okay, they are working harder than most people, and I think that we're short-sighted here because it is very important to our economy, and it has been not just now, but for the entire history of this country to refresh our workforce with people willing to work hard for a better life and who bring fresh ideas to our industries.
All right, Mary Margaret, parting thought, and then we're going to get out of here.
Well, Chris, I'd say maybe you're right. Maybe we are short-sighted when it comes to that issue, but I just look around and I can't find any Democrats who are saying, true, we should get rid of the murderers and the rapists.
You can. Every single one of them will say that.
I have not seen any of them.
Everyone will say that.
I haven't.
Chuck
seen
Schumer says it every day when he speaks before a camera. I know you're at the White House listening to Stephen Miller and Katie, but come on.
Well, just because
go over to the Senate, it's right across the street. They'll tell you.
Hey,
go
Chris,
talk to any Democratic
they're
senator
saying no cooperation with
national
national law enforcement on immigration on any issue.
Chris, as a conservative journalist, I'm not just at the White House listening to Stephen Miller. I'm talking to everyone. I just told you I was talking to Gavin.
Clearly, you're not, because if you can't find a Democrat, I'm a Democrat. I'm sorry. I just told you, murderers, we should get rid of them. Rapists, pedophiles, get them out of the country.
That's great, Chris.
Every Democrat will say that to you. Every elected Democrat.
Chris doesn't like to let women speak, apparently. This is what I'm trying to tell you, is that
now you're a feminist.
Let her finish her point. Let her finish her point.
Journalist talks to everyone. And I can tell you, I asked many of these top Democratic officials, I said to them, I reached out to them as a journalist and said, do you want to tone down the rhetoric? Do you want to get rid of these violent criminals that are in our country illegally? They're not interested in talking about that. All they're interested in is saying, Donald Trump bad. We want our agenda, get rid of ICE, defund ICE. They're not interested in compromise. They're interested in political messaging. So maybe, Chris, you should take what you're saying. Sounds more common sense to me than what I'm hearing from them. So maybe you should give them some advice.
I just don't think you're listening or watching the Sunday morning shows or other interviews with them.
The Sunday morning shows elected Democratic leaders in cities that could welcome immigration enforcement and have said defiance at every turn, right? Maybe it's talking
make a deal with them. I mean, Trump's supposed to be a deal maker. Go make a deal. I don't understand.
They can both make a deal. All right, we got to leave it there.
I also don't think we should hold our breath for political operatives to be eleveting the conversation. It sounds like some of the folks that Mary was talking to. Well, I wouldn't say we're not all political operatives. We're
media operatives. We're even more disgusting creatures. All right, Mary Margaret, Stephen, Chris Hahn, thank you so much for joining Two-Way today. This was a lot of fun, very spicy. Thank you to our community members for participating. We'll be back next week. I'm not sure I'll be here. I'm not sure who else will be. Maybe Nina Turner, maybe Emma Jo. We'll see. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your feedback, and we'll talk to you then. Bye-bye.
See you later.